This is a 2022 Toyota Corolla Cross XLE with all-wheel drive, a brand new compact SUV that carries the name of the best-selling compact sedan in history. Moreover, it's built from the same platform and uses the same engine. So you can think of it as a tall Corolla hatchback if you prefer. My name is Robin Warner, an experienced engineer and magazine editor, and I would prefer you didn't. Now, the Corolla Cross XLE you see here is the top trim of the lineup above the L and LE models. That means you get 18-inch alloy wheels, Softex instead of fabric interior, and dual zone climate control. Though all three trims are available in either front or all-wheel drive. And all three trims use the same 2-liter inline 4-cylinder engine that produces a peak 169 horsepower and 150 pound-feet of torque. That power then goes through a continuously variable transmission and, in this case, onto all four wheels. The base price for the 2022 Toyota Corolla Cross is $23,410. An XLE with all-wheel drive starts at $28,840, and my test car costs $32,419. For those that are interested, I included detailed specifications including dimensions, fuel economy, and options in the description. Alright, let's take a look around the car. Well, here it is, the all-new 2022 Toyota Corolla Cross, and this particular one is an XLE with all-wheel drive. And this particular one is painted in celestite gray. And what you've got here is a pretty standard fare compact SUV shape and look, which is kind of a departure from what Toyota has done with their compact SUVs in the past. The similarly sized, much funkier looking Toyota C-HR has been with us since the 2018 model year and definitely does not look this standard. I think this kind of means that Toyota is starting to take the compact SUV class more seriously and has, as a result, a much more serious contender with a much more serious name as well. From the front, you've got a pretty standard Toyota shape, although the grille is not a pentagon or anything super fancy like that. You know, pretty standard shape, but you've got a lot of like texture and curvature in the grille shape. Pretty standard sized Toyota logo in front, nothing ostentatious or overpowering. Slightly on the less fancy side, black plastic here, though you do get some fog lights right there. And these headlights are nice and slim and kind of long like this, and they are LED. Plus, in case you forget, they tell you right there that it's a Corolla Cross. That's nice, huh? These wheels, because this is an XLE, are alloys, and they are 18 inches in size, perfectly reasonable for this class of vehicle. The basic Corolla Cross L gets 17-inch steel wheels with wheel covers. As I said before, this is a pretty standard compact SUV shape and pretty darn standard compact SUV size. In fact, it's very close in dimensions to the also new for 2022 Volkswagen Taos. And I'll put the different measurements on the screen here so you can see. These things are very closely aligned in terms of size. Now, in terms of driving feel, that's very different, but hey, size-wise, this is very similar. And of course, we're not too far off from your Honda HR-Vs and the rest of the class. Looking it back, as you go back, you get yet another reminder that this is a Corolla Cross. And I will say, I do like this window trim treatment right here that leads into the back of the Corolla Cross. As we go to the back, you can see this nice integrated rear spoiler because of course you need all that extra downforce for a high performance vehicle such as this. And we go to the back, pretty standard shape continues in back, although one thing I do appreciate, we do just have a nice and regular single exhaust right there. And since we're down here, I will briefly show you that this is in fact an independent rear suspension, and that is because this is the all-wheel drive model. The front-wheel drive versions of the Corolla Cross do get a torsion beam suspension, which is a solid rear axle suspension. So the fact that this is an all-wheel drive means that this is four-wheel independent suspension as well. Oh, and one more quick thing. The height of the Corolla Cross is listed as 64.8 inches, but that does include this antenna right here. So we're talking more like 61, 62 inches if we're just going to the regular roof. Okay, let's take a look inside. It is a power lift gate, and it reveals 24 cubic feet of space inside, and that is with the seats folded up. We do have a nice little privacy panel right here. If you fold the seats flat, that space does of course increase, but Toyota does not specify exactly how much. But that's easy enough to do, and you do get a nice flat floor when you lower the second row, which is easy to do right there and right there. It is a 60-40 split, and as you can see, you get a nice amount of space here. I'll remove the privacy panel. And there is your space with the second row folded. Moving to the second row, I have both front seats set up to be comfortable for me, and that gives you a decent amount of legroom for the second row. Not much extra, but you know, something. You know, I've got maybe an inch of knee room here, and I am 5'11" or 181 centimeters tall. And the seat height is actually pleasantly good. So I've got decent thigh support, and I've got about an inch of headroom as well. Now, because this is an XLE, I do have a center console here, and that does provide more cup holders. However, you might have noticed that the door has a cup holder as well, and you do get power windows. Also, I have to crouch way down to show you, you have a couple of USB ports down here. That is USB-A right there and a USB-C down there. All right, to the front. Of course, we do have power windows, power locks, side view mirror adjustment, door handle, those types of things. You do get like a bottle holder. This is a driver only power adjustable seat, 10-way power adjustment, and that's on the XLE trim only. You do over here have tailgate lift, automatic high beams on and off, and your instrument cluster light adjustment, those types of things. You do get tilt and telescope steering adjustment. It is manually operated, it is right there. What you see here is a 7-inch, what Toyota calls multi-information display. And what that means is we do get real gauges, but like these weird like half gauges. The screen is right here, 7 inches, and then we've got a real gauge for RPMs there, and then we've got coolant temperature and fuel gauges right there. Speed is digital up top, and you've got plenty of other information right now. Right now you just see road trip information, and you can see that it's nice and cold here in Michigan. This 7-inch display is only for the XLE trim. The others get a smaller 4.2-inch display, and I imagine more complete looking actual gauges. The steering wheel itself also has plenty of adjustments right here, volume, phone, and then cruise control options right up here, and other bits for the center console display, which is an 8-inch display right here. If you get the L trim, this is a 7-inch display, but all three trims do come with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. However, it is wired. The USB connection is right there. And because this is XLE, we do have heated front seats, which is nice, as well as dual zone climate control right here. LEs get single zone climate control, and L models get manually adjusting HVAC, but you still get air conditioning and those kinds of things. Beneath the heated seats and USB port, you do get Qi wireless charging down here. That is on LE and XLE models, and it tells you if it's charging with that indicator right there that turns to amber if a phone's on it and charging. You do have electric parking brake and brake hold at an intersection, those types of things. Cup holders and a bit of storage here in the center console, along with some more charging port options, although that's your old cigarette lighter style down there. Looking up, this particular car is optioned with the moonroof, which has a privacy panel that's manual right there, and then powered options here to actually open it or just tilt it up and down right here, as well as your different lighting options right here. So pretty standard fare, plenty of comfort for a compact SUV, and something that I'm pretty darn curious to see what it's like to drive. So let's go for a drive. Hi everybody. Well, here it is, the all-new 2022 Toyota Corolla Cross. But what is a Corolla Cross? Well, It is a tall Corolla hatchback. It is a compact SUV that is a fair amount smaller than a RAV4 and roughly the same size as a CHR. And it is evidence that Toyota is taking the compact SUV class much more seriously. It's clearly becoming a competitive class that's popular. Sales are up, yada, yada, yada. And that means that Toyota CHR, which was more of a stylistic, a little bit less practical take on the class, wasn't cutting it. Toyota decided to take the name of its most popular and indeed the world's most popular car ever, the Corolla, and add a cross and make an SUV out of it. So here we are, a much more adult-like, much more practical, space-efficient, small but bigger Corolla Cross SUV. This is very close in size to the Volkswagen Taos, which is Volkswagen's smallest SUV, and Volkswagen likes to explain how they're kind of the biggest of the small. You know, the Tiguan's generally bigger than the RAV4, as an example. So this is kind of showing that you want to be on the big side of the smallest compact SUV class, perhaps. In objective terms, this is obviously taller than a Corolla and a fair amount shorter, but it is built on the same platform and it does use the same engine. Now, the Corolla actually has two engines, and this is the bigger of the two engines, 169 horsepower and 150 pound-feet of torque. But there are actually some interesting things about this engine. This 2-liter inline 4-cylinder engine has a compression ratio of 13.0 to 1, pretty darn high. It does have variable valve timing, and despite being a naturally aspirated engine, it actually has a peak torque range of 4,400 RPM to 4,800 RPM. That's pretty rare for a naturally aspirated engine. Usually you have one peak number as it goes over a bell curve kind of shape, but that means that you've got a relatively flat torque curve, which is a good thing to have in an SUV. This does have a CVT, or continuously variable transmission, which is not typically the most driver enthusiast friendly of transmissions, but this particular CVT has an actual first gear. So you get an actual first gear like you would in an automatic transmission, and then it transitions over to the CVT setup. And what that allows is for the CVT ratio range to be a little tighter and lean more towards the highway speeds, cruising speeds, which generally makes it more efficient. All that said, I do wish that the first gear Toyota chose was a shorter gear, so it was a little bit snappier off the line. And this Corolla Cross does have the all-wheel drive system, which does hurt fuel economy a little bit. We get 30 miles combined instead of 32 miles combined. That's really not bad. And it's actually pretty reasonable in terms of cost as well. Going all-wheel drive on any of the three trims adds $1,300 to the price. Really pretty reasonable when you consider what you're getting. The all-wheel drive system can transmit as much as 50% of the power to the rear axle, which works just fine, but usually defaults to a front-wheel drive system, and it does that to minimize drivetrain loss and keep that fuel economy number up as high as it can. You're basically driving a front-wheel drive car unless the system decides it needs to send power to the rear axle, and then it can send up to half of it there. And with the completion of a nice little powertrain overview, why don't we see how well it works and do a quick acceleration test? All right, briefly slowing down, turning auto engine shut off. Okay, quick bit of brake torque, and let's go. Come on, oh yeah. See what I mean? That first gear, it's great to have a real gear, but it is a touch on the tall side. But now that we get moving, it's really pretty darn decent. The CVT takes over, the transition is pretty smooth, and we accelerate pretty reasonably. You know, this weighs 3,325 pounds, 169 horsepower. Not a lot, but we are a little bit better than 20 to 1 weight to power ratio. Perfectly reasonable in this class, and you're not wanting for power. You're definitely able to get moving reasonably, and you have some pace. Honestly though, for a compact SUV at this price point, this engine size, and this fuel economy with all-wheel drive, it's all pretty darn decent. But since we just did an acceleration test in this car, I might as well also show you how well it handles. And to do that, I went to my favorite road with some nice corners and got out the camera. Let me show you that. All right, Toyota said that this is fun to drive just like a Corolla. And the latest Corolla, especially in Apex form, actually has been pretty fun to drive. So let's see how this compares. On my favorite few corners here on this nice little road, when you give it a shot. Okay. Not much grip, but not bad, and reasonable responses. You know, decent amount of understeer. Oof. More understeer. More understeer. Okay, going through a few corners, it was totally competent. It was pleasant, but it wasn't any fun. It wasn't engaging. We don't have a lot of grip here. We do have a lot of understeer, and, you know, driver feel is pretty low. So as you can see, there's a fair amount of understeer, a lot of body roll, and not a lot of engagement. But of course, the flip side to having a car that does not have tons of body control, fair amount of body roll in the corners, means that it's pretty softly sprung, which means that it generally is going to have a nicer ride. And this does have a very perfectly pleasant ride. It goes down the road just fine, handles bumps nice and softly, and goes over rougher patches of pavement without any trouble. I should note that this is the all-wheel drive model, which means I do get the four-wheel independent suspension. I'm a little concerned that the front-wheel drive models will not feel quite as pleasant over bumpy roads because you have that torsion beam, which is a solid rear axle. And that means the whole rear of the car is going to have to kind of move together a little bit more. It's not going to be quite as refined. But again, compact SUV, this is not the territory of the most advanced suspensions. And with that pleasant ride is a perfectly pleasant, perfectly comfortable interior. This soft text material that I'm sitting on feels, you know, kind of like a faux leather, and it feels perfectly comfortable. You know, it's kind of a middle ground interior, and I'm perfectly comfortable in it. The seats are comfortable. They provide good support. I have good lumbar support, decent bolstering. The switchgear is placed really well. It's easy to reach everything. The 8-inch center console screen is easy to read, easy to use, and the 7-inch multi-information display that this XLE model comes with is also easy to read. This is a perfectly easy car to adapt to and just, you know, soak away the miles if you need to. It's not engaging. This is not the driver enthusiast choice for situations, but in terms of just commuting, this would be a comfortable place to get that kind of stuff done. And since we're talking about the work of a car, commuting and all those things, you do get Toyota Safety Sense 2.0, which includes things like blind spot monitor, adaptive cruise control, lane departure alert, and high beam assist automatic high beams. Automatic high beams I really like, the rest I could do without, but whatever, I'm an old driving enthusiast curmudgeon, what do I know? And even though this is a compact SUV, Toyota claims that this can indeed tow 1,500 pounds, which is not a lot, but it's, you know, something. It's a small utility trailer, it's a snowmobile, it's a jet ski, it's a lot of things like that. So, you know, a couple of motocross bikes. So you could tow some toys with this thing on the weekend if you wanted to, which adds to like the general versatility of this thing. You still get decent fuel economy. It's not very big, 175 inches long, and you get a lot of practical space. You know, good decent cargo area when they fold the second row down. You can seat 4 people pretty comfortably, 5 people in a pinch, and get a lot done with this thing with not taking a lot of space. So really, it's just one of those classic Toyota practical, pragmatic choices. It's not going to set your heart on fire with the passion of the car, passion of the drive, anything like that. Not even close. But it's going to tick a lot of boxes of what you need in a car, and for a good price as well. I'm Robin Warner. Thank you for watching. And if you are still watching, I would really, really appreciate it if you like this video and subscribe to my channel. Those things really do help me out a lot. Okay, goodbye. CVT.